right, hello and welcome in everyone to another Mock Draft Monday. Today we're going to be doing a 7-round draft for the Minnesota Vikings. We've just begun to crank up the draft coverage here. I took the day off yesterday. We did a Kellen profile. We're going to do another profile hopefully today or tomorrow. And we will go all the way until the actual NFL draft, and then we'll have even more draft coverage after the draft itself concludes. So if the NFL draft is your thing, and you're not actually a Minnesota Vikings fan, but you've stumbled across this channel, stick around because there might be some content here for you. But today we are going to focus on the Minnesota Vikings as we do more often than not, and this is going to be a 7-round mock draft, which I believe is version 5. We might do one more of these before the actual draft gets here. Remember, we're only 17 days away, so it's crunch time. All right, so before we begin, I do want to preface this with I will always show you the top 5 draft picks available at the time that I make a selection, just in the sake of transparency. That way you can see who is available, who is sliding down during the process, and you can also use that as a method of critique to see if I overreached for a player compared to what was available in the top 5 on the board at the time. Without further ado, let's begin. Round 1, pick 14 overall. The Minnesota Vikings are on the board. The top 5 available are... I don't need to really waste any time with this one, do I? So with the 14th overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Penei Sewell, offensive tackle from Oregon. I've done more mock drafts using the PFF simulator than I can count, both recorded and both that I never made into a video. This is the first time I've seen Penei Sewell fall this far out of the top 10 really at all. So it came as a huge surprise. My draft strategy going into this completely changed. I had to think on the fly for the rest of this process because I had no intention of making the selection at 14 overall. I was going into this with the mindset that I want to trade down, I want to get a 2nd-round pick, and yeah, this totally blew that strategy out of the water because Penei Sewell at 14 overall is a gift. It's an absolute gift. There's been some rumors that he could potentially fall in the draft. A lot of people view Rashawn Slater as potentially the better offensive tackle in the draft. They're like a 1A and a 1B situation going on. A lot can happen in 17 days. We've had situations where prominent mock drafters like Mel Kiper Jr. have had the Vikings trading up to select Penei Sewell. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that this is going to happen, that this will be a real scenario. Is it unlikely? Yeah, I think it is. But in this scenario, I'm going to take advantage of it. Penei Sewell falls to the Vikings at 14 overall for whatever reason. I don't care. He is our new starting left tackle in Minnesota. Continuing on, the Vikings don't pick again until the 78th overall pick, but I decided to move up, and we're going to take over the first pick of the 3rd round, trading with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars will receive pick 78 and 134. Vikings take the 65th overall pick. That puts us on the board at round 3. Pick 1, which is 65 overall. Top 5 players available at this selection are Jamar Johnson, Dyami Brown, Jabril Cox, Alim McNeill, and ArDarius Washington. So the reason I traded up was because, A, I want to get, I didn't want to wait until all of my options that I was looking at were exhausted, and I still want to attack the trenches because I don't want Gillsepie or Dakota Dozier to be a starter for the Vikings on the offensive line in 2021. We have to shore up the interior. It has to be done. So I'm going to sacrifice a little draft capital, move up, and the selection at 65 overall, the Minnesota Vikings are going to take Creed Humphrey, interior offensive lineman from Oklahoma. As his natural position is center, I'm going to move him over to left guard. That way Dakota Dozier and Gillsepie can both be backups. We will have a new starting offensive line, including Penei Sewell in the left tackle position, Creed Humphrey at left guard, Garrett Bradbury will remain at center, Ezra Cleveland remains at right guard, and Brian O'Neill remains at right tackle. That is already a huge improvement in my mind, and that will give Kirk Cousins better protection going forward. The offense has been addressed. Thank you for nothing, Mike Zimmer, during free agency. All right, so we are done trading there. The next selection the Vikings would make wouldn't be until pick 90, but I decided once again to move up, this time trading with the Oakland Raiders, almost said it. The Las Vegas Raiders, they will receive pick 90, pick 199, and pick 223. Vikings in return get pick 79, which is the 16th pick of the 3rd round. I know that sounds kind of lopsided. I originally offered pick 90 and pick 199 in exchange for 79, but they didn't bite. But I figured throw in that 7th round compensation pick. I don't really care about it anyway. So that is the trade that happened. On the board for the Minnesota Vikings at round 3, pick 16 is Jamar Johnson, Dyami Brown, ArDarius Washington, Damon Davis, and Jamien Sherwood. So for this one, Mike Zimmer's been more than cooperative for the first couple of picks, letting us address the offensive line. I decided to throw him a bone. So with the 79th overall pick, round 3, pick 16, Minnesota Vikings select Milton Williams, defensive tackle from Louisiana Tech. Guy who had a fantastic pro day, flew under the radar for most of the college football season, rising up draft boards. I don't expect him really to be available at this spot when the real draft rolls around, but to get him here makes all the sense in the world. It doesn't mean that I think that we need to continue to upgrade the interior of the defense, but I know Mike Zimmer wants to. If he had his way, he's probably taking Christian Barmore in the first round because they're so afraid of what happened at the end of last season with the Alvin Kamara murder game and not being able to stop the run against the Saints and the Bears. So this gives him what he wants. He has a new shiny toy for the interior of the defensive line. Moving on, the Vikings' next selection is the 119 overall. Round 4, pick 14, top 5 available. Jamin Davis, Jamien Sherwood, Kendrick Green, Tay Gowan, and Josh Palmer. The pick here for the Minnesota Vikings is going to be another defensive selection, and they're selecting Jamin Davis, linebacker from Kentucky. The reason for this is because both I want competition in the linebacker room for this season, and I'm worried about depth next season. Anthony Barr has restructured, likely to walk in free agency next year. Am I convinced that Troy Dye is good enough to be a starter in this league? I'm not sure yet, so I'd like to give him some competition. And there's always the concern about injury, which we saw what happened last year that totally decimated this positional group for us on defense. And it was just pretty much that of a joke towards the end of the season because we ended up losing, what's his name? The middle line. Why can't I remember his name right now? Eric Kendricks. I don't know why that just totally escaped me there for a moment. So, Jamin Davis is going to be our new linebacker. Of course, I don't think he absolutely replaces Eric Wilson, but I think he'll compete with Troy Dye for playing time this year. All right, moving on to the Vikings' next selection. Round 4, pick 20, 125 overall. Top 5 players on the board at this selection were Jamin Davis. I just picked Jamin Davis. Jamien Sherwood, Kendrick Green, Tay Gowan, Cade Johnson, Jalen Darden. A lot of wide receivers available, but I'm going back to the trenches once again. We are spending a lot of capital in the trenches because that's how you win Super Bowls, in my opinion. So the selection at 125 overall for the Minnesota Vikings is going to be Kendrick Green, guard from Illinois. I probably could have had him maybe one pick later, but I didn't want to risk it. I think he's the best guard available left other than Ben Cleveland, who ended up getting picked, I think, like 7 selections after this. So this offers us some depth at the guard position and maybe even gives us the opportunity to cut either Dakota Dozier or Drew Samia. So who knows if that's a possibility. All right. Moving on to the Vikings' next selection at 143 overall, round 4, pick 38. Top 5 available at this selection are Jamien Sherwood, Cade Johnson, Kelvin Joseph, Khalil Herbert, and Trey Brown. So for this one, I decided I'm finally going to dip into the wide receiver pool, try to find a serviceable wide receiver 3 other than BC Johnson and Chad Beebe, who, I mean, yes, they're okay, but I think we can do better. So for this selection, the Minnesota Vikings select at 143 overall, Cade Johnson, wide receiver, South Dakota State. I'm going to go and throw a dart at the wide receiver pool in the NFL draft and see if I hit something. Moving on to pick 157 for the Minnesota Vikings. This is round 5, pick 13. Top 5 available are Kelvin Joseph, Trey Brown, Christian Uphoff, Dante Smith, and Tyree Gillsepie. Gillespie, I think, would be an interesting selection here, but we've pretty much addressed safety and free agency. Yeah, you could sort of justify taking a safety in the draft because Xavier Woods and Harrison Smith are both free agents next year. As of right now, there has been no restructure or extension for Harrison Smith just yet, so that is always a possibility. But I think we need to take a quarterback. There's only 4 left at the time of this selection. Shane Buechele, Philippi Franks, Sam Ehlinger, and Ian Book are the only quarterbacks left in the draft at this early in round 5. So I'm going to take one here. The Minnesota Vikings select with the 157th pick is Sam Ehlinger, quarterback from Texas. Out of the skill sets of the remaining quarterbacks, Sam Ehlinger really is the only one I'm interested in. I don't think that he's going to be a prospect that is going to develop into, you know, an everyday starter in the NFL. Far from it. But at least this gives me something that I'm more confident in going forward other than Jake Browning and Nate Stanley. Because remember, as of this recording, Sean Mannion is still a free agent and they have not signed a backup quarterback behind Kirk Cousins. So I'm going to go ahead and take Sam Ehlinger, the Texas quarterback, with this selection. All right, moving on to the Vikings' last pick of this 7-round mock draft. We're going to end things in round 5 because of the trades that I have made, and I didn't feel like going all the way to round 7 and digging through what was left over. So for round 5, pick 34, 168 overall, the top 5 left on the top 5 available at this selection: Trey Brown, Cornell, Powell, Damar, Hamlin, Chris Evans, and Bobby Brown. For this selection, I decided to give Mike Zimmer a pat on the back and say, hey, you've been very cooperative throughout this entire draft process. You let me take 3 offensive linemen. You let me take a wide receiver. You let me take a quarterback. So far throughout this draft, we've only spent 2 picks on your defense. Well, I'm going to let you have the last one. So for this selection, Minnesota Vikings at 168 overall are going to select Trey Brown, cornerback from Oklahoma. I think we need at least one more body in the cornerback room this year because Mike Hughes, can't really trust him. Jeff Gladney, unsure what to make of his current legal situation, so this gives us a little bit of insurance. And then, of course, we don't know who's going to play. I guess we do know who's going to play nickel corner. That's going to be Mackenzie Alexander. I don't know why I thought he would do anything else but that. But this gives us some depth, and that's what we're looking for. Trey Brown, I think, is an exciting prospect for the cornerback position, and then he will fill in nicely if Mike Hughes and or Jeff Gladney's days are numbered in Minnesota. So that's going to do it for this 7-round mock draft. We didn't go all the way to the 7th round, but I felt like trading up and being aggressive to get some more selections in the earlier rounds. Let me know what you think. The results here are on the screen. And as always, thank you for watching and have a nice day.